If you're like many who have written into us at PREPSTEADERS, you probably have someone in your family who is perhaps disabled or elderly or just a reluctant prepper, and you want to help them, but you don't know how to do it without being offensive or anything like that. Today, I'm going to give you one of the wonderful solutions that you can do right now, and it's making an EDC pack for you and for everyone in your family. Now, an EDC means everyday carry. And by that definition, you can guess it means you need to have this pretty much with you every day and pretty close to wherever you are at all times. I'm going to talk you through the ingredients I recommend, the price points, even where to put these. This is going to be an exciting episode, so don't go away. If you've ever been around the prepper community for very long, you'll hear so many different new terms that it's good to learn. And one of the very first ones you'll learn is EDC, which means everyday carry. All of us have everyday carry, EDC. So if perhaps I were to ask our cameraman what his EDC is, probably right now he would reach for his pocket and feel he's probably got keys, he might have a pocket knife or a Leatherman, and he probably carries his wallet with some credit cards and cash. I don't know, don't find him and see, but I'm just saying every one of us has EDC. For us women, it's often our purse and everything we put in there. It might be a good time for you to just dump that purse upside down, see what you've got in there, and weed out what is not serving you, what is just dead weight, and make sure you have in it some of these crucial elements we're going to talk about today. Also, I want to make sure you know this is not a comprehensive everything you need to have with you at all times. Your EDC is going to look different than mine based on your climate, your age, if you have children you're looking after, or if you're traveling solo, all kinds of factors. But I want us to make a very good universal everyday carry pack. Obviously, this is just big enough that I cannot carry it in my purse, but it kind of takes the place of maybe a get-home bag or something that I would carry around all the time with me. But I will tell you before we're done exactly where I'd put this. Now, just a couple of weeks ago, I made a whole bunch of these. I've already put all of them where they go, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But I kept 2 of them just so I could show you what ingredients I put in and what I would recommend for you. And then you take notes, or you can click below and see the list for yourself, but make your own version that works for you and your life. All right? So here's just some suggestions that I would recommend, and you take it from there, okay? The first thing you're going to need is what's often called a snack box or lunch box or bento box. You hear them called all kinds of different things, but the kind I want you to get is at the very least, this is an at the very least, it has a gasket that keeps it waterproof and mouse-proof. It keeps the smell out. So you've got a nice little kind of rubbery gasket that keeps the water out. Now, this is plastic, and if you've heard me talk at all, you know I am very anti-plastic. But as I priced the one I wanted, which was stainless steel, and I will put a link below so you can see exactly what I would recommend, it runs about $20 a piece, and I don't have that unless I'm just making one for myself or a few for myself. I was making these for my elderly parents, and so because I needed to make a lot, $20 or more per box alone, without any ingredients, that was just too much. But I hope some of you have that budget, and if you can, get the stainless steel with the gaskets that clamp down real tight. It's going to be rust proof, it's going to be waterproof, it's going to be even almost fireproof. You know, the stuff inside might melt, but you get my point, okay? So get what you can, do what you have for your budget. At Walmart, I think I bought these for somewhere around $3 each. It might have been even a little bit less, but it enabled me to get quite a few of them. And you'll notice it has just 2 compartments. Some of them have a divider that actually slides out or is adjustable. Go for it, whatever you need. But you'll see me making one of these today. All right. remember our couple of things that are of paramount importance that we want to cover first, and that's going to be something like fire, water, shelter, those kind of things, you know, a little bit of sustenance. So let's start over here at the end, and I want my parents who are elderly to have it easy, even though they could use a ferro rod. And incidentally, my parents are both good at making fires. They could do it with a ferro rod. I want you to think in the mindset of who you're making this for, and offer solutions that are specifically tailored to them. So a Bic lighter is going to be one of the most universally known how to use, the easiest. Remember, in a cold situation, it is going to be a little bit harder to use because you've got to have use of your thumbs. Also, a lot of folks are going to be thankful if they take their Bic lighter and they wrap it in just a little bit of strong tape. And if you've got duct tape, that is fantastic. It is so useful in an emergency, and if you want to get real tactical, you can wrap this with duct tape. And there are other folks that would even take off this top little metal part, and so that it's easier to flick, and even when it runs out of gas, oil inside, it's going to still light. Really, I want you to make it as simple as possible, and if you're making this for someone disabled or elderly, don't try and require of them any kind of extra special analysis of how to use it, because in a crisis they won't have time. They just need it to light a fire. So just sticking in that is great. And you notice I have the packaging on this. Initially I packed all of these with the packaging, hoping that that would be a little bit of fire tinder that my parents could use if they needed to start. But as I started filling it up, I ran out of space, and that was one of the first things to go. So think about that when you're packing yours. Also, I never want you to only have one way to do things. So you can imagine I also offered a second way. And on the little bracelet that I had that has the hank of rope, I also made sure it had built into it a little ferro rod right here. And you've probably seen me use one of those before, but a ferro rod and a little striker for that ferro rod. My parents are both able to do that. If you're working with someone who's disabled that wouldn't know to look there, because it's kind of hidden, don't expect them to be so intuitive that they know to look, because in a crisis, even the brightest mind, even the most sharp senses that we all have are a little bit tested in that moment. So anyway, but have multiple of anything that you possibly can, especially these important ingredients like fire. You want them to have that option. All right, we'll come back to this in a minute. So you've covered fire. I want you to have shelter, and I want you to have warmth. Now, in here I've included one of these emergency blankets, and I got the extra big one. My dad is 6'1", and I know he's not gonna like the little tiny wimpy version that just barely wraps around his shoulders. It needs to be at least 72 inches long for him to have something substantial that he would wrap around himself. So get an emergency blanket. Sometimes you can get them for like $1 a piece. I definitely want you to have one of those in there. That would actually keep in over 90% of their body warmth if they wrapped it around like a blanket, but it would also do so many other things, like reflect heat if they needed to make a little solar oven for themselves. It would act as a little tent if they needed to use some of their cordage to prop it up as a little pup tent over them to keep them out of the elements and rain. It's so versatile. There are about 45 different things you can do with one of these, and we have an episode dedicated just to that. So make sure you get the best one you can and have it in there, knowing that the bigger you get, the thicker it is, the more mass it's going to take up in that little box. All right. In addition to that, I also included one set of hot hands. I love these. They are so useful, and they provide heat for up to 10 hours. My parents live in a colder climate, and man, when it gets cold, it just bites right through you. So having at least 2 of these hot hands that they could put in their mittens or in their socks or on their body to keep them warm is going to perhaps save their lives. And especially combined with this to trap that heat in, oh man, that's a good combination. So I have both of those included. Now, interestingly, my father is kind of affected when he runs out of sugar and hasn't eaten in a long time. And so I made sure that just in case he hit a sugar low, there was at least one sugar lozenge, honey lozenge right in there that he could suck on so that it would get his sugar levels up a little bit. He's not diabetic, and some of you think, oh, well, I'm not diabetic, I wouldn't need that. But you try going with food for a long time, or trying to walk home from work or church or something on an empty stomach, and you'd be so thankful for something sweet like that that would give you a burst of energy. In addition to that, while we're talking though about food, I did include a little bar like this. Now, you've seen our episode perhaps on SOS bars or Daytrix bars. Those have a whole lot more energy to them and will sustain you with a lot more calories. You use what works for you. I want you to think about your situation and the people you're working with and get something that is the most bang for your buck, the most calories you can fit in that little box in the small space you have to work with. And on top of this, let's see, I also put jerky because my dad loves jerky and meat, and you need protein so badly when you're trying to walk home from a distance. I wanted them to have a little of that. So you've got the salty, you've got the sweet, you've got protein, as much energy as I can fit. And thankfully this pack is just thin enough that I can set it right there in the bottom of this, and it fits pretty good. So that's what I've got in the very bottom of my box. Then on top of that, I folded up the hot hands and tucked that in there. And then I start layering everything else that needs to go in there. I did put a water in because this is going to be imperative. Of course, they need more water than that. And it fits perfectly in that little spot. So there's the water. But I am going to tuck right around the sides of the water what you've seen in some of our other episodes, and that is the Whizzy wipes. Those are not mints, and you'll want to remind your people if you think that they might get that wrong. Of course, once they stick it in their mouth and it immediately makes itself very large, you'll know, oh, that's a Whizzy wipe. That is nothing enjoyable or sweet. But I tuck that right around the edges because there's room. And if I were you, I'd tuck as many as you can. These are going to be helpful for stopping a wound. They're going to be helpful for sanitation if you did have to use the restroom out in the wild. These explode out into a towel about that large. You probably have seen our episode on those. They're very handy to have on hand, and I would recommend all of you have at least some of them. If I had room for toilet paper, I would put the real thing in here, because boy is it so much better than Whizzy wipes. But anyway, there you go with that. Then I'm layering some of these other things in. You heard me talk about the bar of food that I have in there. I'm going to put that lighter right in there with it. One of the things that is important is sanitation, and in a difficult spot, I do not want you using the one little tiny bit of water I gave you to wash your hands with. So having some Germ-X hand sanitizer is a great plan. Now, if you're all natural, you know you don't want to use this in a real everyday basis in your house. You want to use regular soap, but in an emergency, this is going to come in handy, especially if there was any wound or anything that you had to have your hands sterile to help. So having a little hand sanitizer is going to come in very, very handy. So tuck that in there also. Now, they're going to need a flashlight, and you've got multiple options. I wanted to show you, you could do whatever you need to. If you're like me and you're trying to save money, you used to be able to get these at the dollar store and they lasted pretty well. That's not really the case anymore, but if you go on Amazon, you can buy them in packs, sometimes 3 packs or 4 packs or 6 or 10 packs, and it makes them much cheaper. That's what I did when I made mine. And incidentally, we'll see if I made a wise decision or not. I may regret it, but these don't even have a battery that you take out. They are supposed to be pretty waterproof, but they charge with a little cord that comes with them, and each one comes with a cord. I'm not packing this in here. I'm just charging these all the way up, and I am putting a cord nearby. However, this is one of those universal cords, so it could charge your phone, it could do all kinds of things. Mostly I'm just making sure that this wonderful little light has a good strong light to it. Now, this has 3 beams. It has a bright, it has a low, and it has a little emergency beam. And I'm so thankful for that. And then it clicks off. I got this very simple because when you're giving a gift like this to strangers who may not know how to use it, make sure it has a really easy to find button to turn on. So they don't struggle with it, trying to figure out what is the way to get this on or off, or what's the secret to making it do its different little things that it does. Get something very, very simple. And it could even be, if your budget is less than this is what they currently carry at the dollar store. These fun little flat ones that is actually magnetized so you can stick it on anything. But it puts out quite a lot of light, and it holds its charge for quite a long time, maybe a year or 2 without dimming. So if your budget is only $1 for your flashlight, there's your flashlight, and it'll fit in there with your stuff. I want you to think for what works with you. You could get very tactical. You could get something far more expensive, something that's drop proof, but make sure it's super easy to use. It's obvious this only turns on with a 1-button click, and you want to have it charged up in the brightest light that you can afford for the space. So just keep that in mind. So I've tucked my flashlight into my box. Now, one of the most important things that they're going to need is some way of cutting. They might need to cut the cord to make their little pup tent with their emergency blanket or whatever. So when I explored online, I know that my father is very used to Leatherman tools. That's what he would have as his EDC on his person at all times. And once you've had a Leatherman, you know you're hooked on always having needle nose pliers with you, especially if you're in the cold and don't have good strong use of your hands to do fine motor skill type work. You're so thankful for this. So it has the needle nose pliers, it has a little part of it that even cuts wire, and then it has all of the different tools that you might need inside of it. And this is not a Leatherman brand at all, but it was the highest quality that I could get for the money. You used to be able to get these at the dollar store. The thing is I want to recommend you don't do that, because often those have plastic parts somewhere in here, and they look real strong when you buy them, and then a month or 2 later you get them out of your package and you realize, oh, this is just trash. This is not helpful at all. So this is full stainless steel at least, so I'm thankful for that, and both of my parents are capable of using that. If you're making one of these for small children though, or for someone who can't be strong enough to lift those apart, keep that in mind and get something that works for them. It might just be a small one of those little tiny Swiss Army knives or whatever you can, but get the best you can with your money. And for me, knowing that my parents are elderly and both of them are super strong, probably stronger than me, but I want them to not have to struggle with this. So if you get one like I did that is a little bit hard to maneuver, go ahead and spray it down ahead of time with WD-40 so that it comes just as easy as can be open. In a crisis, you have to think. Normally, who cares whether it works well or not? You can struggle with it and get it to work. But in a crisis, you just want to make it as easy and stress-free as possible for everyone. Also, many of these little type tools come in their own little sheath, and that's great. However, that is quite a bit of little packaging that you've got to fit in there. So for me, I did buy one of these for every pack that I made, but I went ahead and took it out of its sheath, and I'm just putting it in the package just like this. Okay, now we're getting down to a few of the last things, and I want to recommend either or on a few of these. I want you to have a hank, that's what you would call something like this, of 550 paracord. If you were to go to Walmart or the dollar store and just get paracord, that's not the same. It needs to be at least a 550 number or higher, because that's going to hold the weight of whoever it is that's needing to climb with it or make a tent with it or haul heavy things. Also, you'll notice that you can get the 550 paracord that has strings on the inside of it. So you've got the outside sheath, but then the inside comes apart. So literally it makes smaller strings, and those could be used for fishing or stringing together to make a little carrying bag or a net, or hold up a little tiny tent that you've made with your Mylar blanket. I want you to have options, and so at least 550 paracord or higher is going to be the best bet for you. Now, for my parents, just because of space, I had to go ahead and you call this good with the amount of paracord, and this is hardly enough, but this amount of paracord is at least 10 feet, and so they will have at least 10 feet that they can work with. Also, this has a compass on it, and some of these compasses work, some of them don't. So it's good if you educate your family on how to read a compass and how to know if it's not working by looking at the sun and looking at the indications around in nature that are going to confirm that yes, indeed, it is pointing the right direction. Again, it has the ferro rod and the little scraper that's going to be able to make sparks with that ferro rod, and it has a whistle on it, because you can think, oh, in an emergency, I don't want anyone to find me. Well, how do you know that you're going to be in that kind of an emergency? They might really want someone to find them. They might be stranded in no man's land, and they need a whistle that's going to make noise. So having a whistle like that is going to be fantastic on this. Or some people would prefer something similar to this, where its major function is a whistle, but it also has a thermometer, which really doesn't matter so much. You're stuck there regardless of the temperature, but this has a good little bit bigger, little bit stronger compass on it, and a flashlight, a little tiny one, and a place for you to be able to store some waterproof matches inside. Some people would find this to be a better option for them. It also has a magnifying glass and a kind of a mirror on it, which is great for reflecting so that you could start a fire that way. Whatever works for you. You don't have to do my version of things, but you need it to fit in your package and give you plenty of space. So for me, I am not going to put in this. I'm going to put in the multifunction little bracelet here, and it tucks in there pretty good. Some other things that you might want to consider are ranger beads. The thing about ranger beads is they're only helpful to those who know what they are and how to use them, and be trained on them. And so if you have a reluctant prepper in your family that isn't going to learn and doesn't want to know how to use ranger beads, don't put that in there. It's just wasting space and taking up, creating more weight. But if in your family you know how to use these, and you can watch our episode if you'd like to make some of your own and like to know how to use them. If your family does, this is great for even the children to be able to tuck right in there. Also, this is another optional one, but man, if it's raining outside and they need to be able to store something, this takes up almost no space. And if you remember, you can start a fire just by filling some water in the bottom of a bag like this. There are so many uses for just having one Ziploc bag tucked in there. And if you have room for that, it's almost weightless. You go ahead and tuck that right in there. Another optional one I wanted to mention is coffee, just because it's a morale booster for those who are in need of it, or if they're stuck on the trail for a long time. Coffee is a drink that sometimes brings a great comfort to someone who might be stranded out, especially in the cold. So keep that in mind. And the one thing I wished so badly I could fit, but I couldn't, and you might be able to find something like that, is a tin cup, or if I had a stainless steel bento box, you can imagine I could boil water in that over a fire or something. Having it all be in plastic doesn't allow me to have any kind of vessel unless I find on the trail a coffee can or some sort of an old Coca-Cola can or something like that to use to cook or purify water in. But if you can find a small enough little tin cup that fits right over that water bottle, go ahead and tuck it into yours, because ideally want some sort of little metal vessel that they could easily boil water in. And then one of the last things I want to mention is you absolutely want a pure cotton, don't settle for anything different, but a pure cotton bandana. This could be used as a tourniquet if they are hurt, or if any kind of cut or damage was done to them. This is going to be their little first aid kit part of that. It could be a sling for your arm if you got your arm hurt. It could just be something that you pour water on and cool around your neck if you're stuck out in the heat, or give you shade. It can filter water if you need to filter water through it. A bandana is going to be able to mark the trail. You could cut it into little shreds or rip it and mark the trail as you go so you can find your way back. A bandana is just imperative as part of your kit. And if you have room and want to, you could do a shamag, something a little bit more tactical. I really think for our safety, it might be almost wiser to not look too tactical. So I made each of my EDC packs with a different color, and I made all of them identical so that as I was able to show my parents, these are the ingredients, this is where they're placed, they could easily know, okay, that's what I can expect. And all of them have one of these tucked into it. So once I get through with all of it and I put the lid on, let me show you what the finished product looks like. It just barely fits and has everything in it that I want. Oh yes, I forgot that. The rest of these are optional, these things that you see laying around me. But there is my little EDC kit that I've created. And I have two of these that I've made. I knew my mother is always found driving in her Toyota Highlander. And my dad has an old little Jeep that he drives around in. So I made sure that I put the first ones in the dash of the Highlander. And you can imagine this is just the perfect size to fit in the dash of almost any vehicle and still have room around it. You don't want to fill up the space so much that they can't fit anything else. So this fits perfectly in the dash of the Highlander. And then I went into the Jeep and noticed that the armrest had a cavity under it. So I put it into the Jeep's, actually I had my mother help me. You'll see her here putting it into the armrest of the Jeep. And any given day, my father is found either on his Ferguson tractor out working in the field or fixing fence. He has 7 miles of fence he keeps up, and you should see him when the cows get through it, and he is not a happy man. Or the elk, because in Oregon we have elk that come in these huge herds and just plow right through the fences that you've spent all day putting up. But every time that happens, you'll find him on either the Ferguson tractor or his UTV. And so I made sure I opened the Ferguson tractor and had my mom help me. We noticed in the very front of it, there's an old spot for a toolbox, but he has his hand towels tucked in there and all his tools. So right in the part next to the steering wheel, right above that battery, that's where there was a little place to tuck one of these EDC packs for him. And there was a perfect spot in the UTV for him to fix. So when he's not on the Ferguson tractor, he's on the UTV running around picking up firewood or fixing fence. So we tucked one in there. And I did have one last thing I meant to mention that I have right here. My father, incidentally, a few years ago had a stroke. And that's pretty scary if you've ever been through that. But that makes you know that this could save someone's life right here. And I put one of these in every single one of their packs. This is a waterproof stainless steel with a little gasket pill container. And in it, I made sure I put 2 pills so that if in the event he is far away from the house and is fixing fence and working super hard and he were to have something come up, he's got his pills that are going to help him right then in that moment. And I also put 2 little baby aspirin in there as well. And that's what I put in each pack. So think about this for your family members. If they have a need, 1 pill could save a life, and I highly recommend. That doesn't take up much. I actually bought these and put them on all of my parents' keychains as well, but I know how that somehow gets lost in the shuffle sometimes. So there's one in each of these EDC packs, and I want to encourage you, get a little pill container. And even if no one in your family is on any kind of medication that they would need that for, a couple of Advil or a couple of Tylenol would be very helpful in the event that they're, say, walking all the way home from work and need that to keep them from the pain. And that's the whole EDC pack. Now, you saw everything I put in there. I hope that it helps you with your wheels turning of what you want to put in yours. And as much as you can, I hope that you get a metal container, because that would be ideal. It will hold up so much better in the heat and in the rain and everything else. And it gives them a vessel to drink out of, or to purify water or cook in, or whatever like that, if they really were stranded. So I put one of these in each of the different places my parents always find themselves. They are kind of an investment, because the way I budgeted it out was I wanted to spend about $1 on each ingredient, and it ended up being a lot more than that. Each of the flashlights was about $4 each. These were probably the most expensive thing. Each of those stainless steel little multi-tools were, I think, $7 or $8 each. And I wouldn't want to spend any less than that, because if it has even one little plastic part, in the heat and cold, that's going to disintegrate very quickly and be useless in an emergency when you need it to work the best. So get what your budget can handle, but keep in mind this is definitely an investment that you're doing. Also, you used to be able to get these at the dollar store, and I couldn't find those this time. So I think I paid $2 or $3 for each of the bandanas, and that's okay, because my parents are worth it. And I'll bet you have loved ones in your life who are worth it. So budget, be careful with what you get, don't overdo it, and you can't have everything. That's the thing, you can't have everything. But these are imperative to have. Make them today or as very soon as you're able to. It's going to be valuable for saving at least one person's life, and maybe a whole lot more if this is all they had to work with. This isn't a backpack, it's carryable. Almost anyone can do it. If they're in a wheelchair, they can stick it in their back little pocket of their wheelchair. It's doable, and it's something that is age appropriate for almost anyone. All right. Now, I know there are other things we could add to it. I know you have your opinions on what you would add or delete from this, and I would love to hear your comments below. So take the time to click on the description below this YouTube video if that's where you're watching this. I want you to be able to see the link where I have this all outlined on a sheet of paper with the links of where I got my ingredients. So you don't have to buy them where I bought them, but you can, or you can find something similar that works for your situation. And then I would love for you to leave comments below of what you would add or delete, depending on your situation. So tell us what your scenario is and why you have added or deleted that ingredient. It's going to help everybody else as we all formulate our own EDC packs. There you have it. I hope this has been valuable to you, and most of all, I hope I get to glory one day and find out that it actually saved somebody's life because you saw an episode of PREPSTEADERS and you went home and as quick as you could, you made EDC packs for yourself and for everyone you loved, and you put them everywhere they were needed. This is pretty special, and it could save a whole lot of lives. So go out and make yours today. Until I see you again. Would you go out and be a blessing to someone? Just find one person who needs you and be their blessing today. And we'll see you on our next episode. Bye. Thanks for joining us. Hey, before you go, I would love to share a quick word of scripture with you. This is out of the Holy Bible, right there near the very end, and it's in the book of James, chapter 5, verse 16. It says this: "Therefore, confess your sins to one another and pray for one another that you may be healed. The fervent prayer of a righteous person has great power as it is working." It's getting dark out there. Now go out and glow.